48 hours in Maine, BarHarbor Acadia National Park, and then later we were in Montreal.
We'd heard so much about Acadia National Park, we wanted to experience it for ourselves, so off we went.
BarHarbor's downtown overlooks the harbor, and it's quite beautiful in the evenings when we was down there. There's also a lot of shopping up and down several streets there, and all kind of different shops and places to look into, some great architecture, and there's even a moose on a couple of buildings. So we had a great time there, did a lot of looking around the shops, and enjoyed an ice cream, and we also enjoyed a great meal at a restaurant. This is a stock photo of what we had, but it's typical of any of the food you can get in BarHarbor. Here we are getting ready to go out on a cruise on the BarHarbor, Maine. We're going on a nature cruise. It's supposed to be a 3-hour cruise, so we'll see if we make it back or not.
Here's Dave looking out on the railing, over the railing as we're on the boat tour. It's really nice. And a picture of us on the boat.
Yeah, it was a little chilly that day, as you can tell by our attire. When they told us to dress warm, so we made sure we did, even though it was in the summertime.
And there's a lot of pictures, a lot of the little water birds out there, and a couple puffins. They're really tiny and hard to see.
Yeah, they billed that tour as a puffin tour, so they did take us out and find us a couple of them. They also took us around a lot of the islands, and we looked at them. We've seen some seals and stuff like that too. A lot of different wildlife on this tour.
It's a nice nature tour.
Plus the scenery was really great, and so.
Isn't that pretty?
Yep. Some of the other scenery said we'll see some pictures coming up here. I think if you look real close here, you can see some of the seals that or sea lions. I forget which ones they were now.
There were seals there. They're really hard to see. I think their seals were on that.
Yep. There's another island we went around. They pointed out a lot of these islands out here at one time had lighthouses on them. Some of them still exist, and this kind of a thing that went out of fashion since they don't have to have a keeper on the islands anymore. They just have automatic lights, so it's I guess not as romantic as what it used to be. Here's one of the houses that the light keeper used to stay in. It's attached right to the lighthouse here, which probably made it convenient in the wintertime.
And here you can see a picture of a lobster trap. Boy, there's a lot of them all over the water. Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of them. It's hard to imagine how many lobster traps there are. And here's one of the pictures of a bald eagle we've seen out there.
And another lighthouse. There's still a few left, and another one.
Next day we went to Acadia National Park. They have buses that take you around, and I highly recommend that you do it. It's an 11-mile loop one way around, and there's very limited car parking. And the buses are free. We're in Acadia National Park again today. Today we're in the Scenic district, and it's separated from the rest of the national park by about 20 miles, maybe 30 miles, but there's a whole lot less people over here, so we're just going to see what we can see over here.
Hey.
What?
What's down here?
Wave your arms a little bit, I can't find you.
There you go.
Oh, there's my wife down there. She's looking around in a tidal basin, seeing what she can find. tidal basin and a monument to John Moore, who was the original owner of this peninsula and built the first roads out here, and I donated the land for the national park.
Just some more pictures as we drove around and walked around the Scenic area. I mean, it is really unique, and you look out the low water and the shells and the mussels that were there. And then we ended up taking a picture of ourselves by the rocks that are out there that you can climb on and sit on and look around.
There's some more, just thousands and thousands of shells here. When we was there, it was low tide, which is really an interesting time to go, because you can actually see, like when the tide was up, you wouldn't see all this, and this would actually be underwater. The tide in this area is quite dramatic, I guess you'd call it. It comes in and out several feet. There's places where boats are sitting out of the water, and they're pretty good sized boats, and then when the tide comes in, the boats are floating. This was our first look at Montreal. It come from a city park on a high mountain overlooking the city. Quite the view from up here.
When we first got into Montreal, we went downtown to mainly the tourist area, and as you can see, there's a lot of activity down here, and it's a little noisy at times too.
There's some really interesting architecture from around town that we looked at. Some of the streets, very neat town to walk around in. We took our pictures in front of the cathedral doors. Then we got hungry doing that, so we went to a place called Chez Suzette, and of course what are you going to have there but some crepe Suzette.
In Montreal, we found a couple interesting statues downtown. One of them is obviously a French lady. She's holding a poodle and dressed really nice, and then the other one is obviously an Englishman. He's holding a bulldog, and he's dressed in a suit and a hat and everything. Both of them have their nose stuck in the air and very snobbishly. One interpretation we found was that it's the difference between the aristocracy, the lady holding the poodle, and the working man with the it's more like from the bulldog designates somebody that's a working person or a working animal. The other interpretation is the age-old political differences in Canada between the British and the French, also designated by the bulldog and the poodle.
Here's what is supposed to be the Englishman with his English bulldog and his nose in the air. And here's the French woman with her French poodle and her nose in the air. And then here's a picture of the two of them.
This is a monument to the founder of Montreal, and on each corner of it is the nurse who was a co-founder of Montreal, a soldier and a military man, a soldier and a settler, and an Iroquois woman, because the Iroquois were in that area to start with.
There's lots of tall buildings to look at as you walk around the city, and there's also a pretty cool upscale arcade to walk through with lots of jewelry and glassware. We enjoyed walking through that. And we ended our day with refreshments with our friends before we headed home.